The receiver clicked against the cradle. The sound echoed in the office, sharp and final. Ryan sat motionless. He stared at the blank surface of his desk, his hand still gripping the plastic phone base. A single Tuesday morning, 4 minutes of conversation, and 60% of his firm's revenue was gone. The silence that followed the call was not empty. It was heavy, pressing against his eardrums like deep water. He looked up at the glass walls of his office. Beyond them, the floor was busy, lights buzzing, people moving, completely unaware that the foundation under their feet had just disintegrated. He checked the screen. The call log showed the duration of the conversation that had just dismantled his life. He let out a breath he did not know he was holding, but his lungs felt tight. Every contract, every milestone, every growth metric he had tracked for years had been tied to that one account. Now, the screen remained dark. The numbers on his monitor, once symbols of success, now looked like evidence of a mistake. He pushed his chair back. The wheels scraped against the carpet, a harsh, grating sound that broke the stillness. He stood up, walked to the glass, and watched his reflection. The office light caught his eyes, but they remained fixed on the void where his business model used to be. The first ring came 5 seconds after he hung up, then another. The screen lit up with the names of lead investors, each one a demand for an explanation he did not yet have. Ryan ignored the vibrations, watching the phone slide across the desk surface with each buzz. Outside his glass-walled office, the rhythm of the company had shifted. The usual sound of keyboard clicks and client calls had been replaced by a low, jagged murmur. He saw his department heads gathered by the water cooler, their backs to his office, heads close together. They were not working. They were sensing the vacuum. A junior analyst walked past, stopped, and peered through the glass. Ryan turned his back, staring at a blank whiteboard. He heard the muffled sound of a knock on his door, then the handle jiggling. He did not answer. He stepped forward, reached out, and engaged the lock. The click was loud in the small room. He retreated to the corner, away from the glass, as the shadows of his employees stretched long across the hallway floor. The office was losing its order. Voices grew louder, more frantic, vibrating through the thin walls. He had built this firm with 100 people, but as the phone continued to strobe with incoming alerts, he felt the walls closing in on him alone. The office lights flickered off as the building's timer engaged, leaving Ryan in the dim glow of the city skyline. He slumped into his chair, the silence now absolute. His fingers brushed against the spine of a book left on the bottom shelf, a relic from his early days of ambition. He pulled it out, the pages stiff and yellowed. He flipped through the chapters until he found the highlighted passage. Every adversity carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. He read the line 3 times, his pulse drumming against his fingertips. He looked at the stack of financial reports on his desk, the red ink bleeding across the bottom line of every projection. The words on the page felt like a mockery. He compared the promise of a seed of benefit to the reality of his crumbling firm, his empty client list, and the impending layoffs. The gap between the two was a chasm. His grip tightened on the paper. He could not reconcile the platitude with the wreckage. With a sharp, sudden motion, he hurled the book across the room. It struck the wall with a hollow thud and fell open, face down on the carpet. It was a cruel, empty joke, and he was the punchline. The book lay silent on the floor, but the words remained etched in his mind. Ryan stood up, his legs stiff from hours of immobility. He began to pace, back and forth. The floorboards creaked under his weight, a rhythmic, grating sound in the stillness. He paced until the city lights outside dimmed. He paced until the black sky turned to a bruised, thin gray. His frustration began to drain away, leaving a hollow, sharp clarity. He stopped at the desk, his shadow long and distorted against the wall. He picked up his pen, the metal cold against his palm. He looked at the blank notepad. He wrote, "Why did this happen?" and stared at the ink. Then, he crossed it out with a violent, jagged line. He forced his hand to move again. He wrote, "What is this teaching me?" The silence of the office felt different now. It was no longer a cage, but a mirror. He looked at his financial charts, the ones he had spent years obsessively inflating. He saw the truth clearly for the first time. He had not built a business. He had built a fragile, dependent shell that collapsed at the first sign of pressure. He was not a victim of bad luck. He was the architect of his own vulnerability. The realization settled into his chest, heavy and absolute. He stopped pacing. He took a breath, gripped the pen tighter, and waited for the morning light to hit the desk. At exactly 9 a.m., Ryan pushed open the heavy glass door of the boardroom. The hum of conversation in the hallway died instantly. He didn't look at the faces of his staff, though he could feel their eyes tracking his movement. He walked to the center of the mahogany table and set down a thick folder. The sound of paper hitting wood was sharp, echoing in the quiet room. He did not offer a greeting. He did not offer a comforting lie about market fluctuations or temporary setbacks. Instead, he pulled a single chart from the folder and slid it across the surface. It was a stark, visual representation of their cratered revenue. He pointed a finger at the massive, empty gap where their primary client used to be. The room remained motionless. Ryan cleared his throat, his voice cutting through the tension with a cold, steady precision. "We are starting over," he stated. He watched their reactions, seeing the confusion turn into a grim, dawning comprehension. He stood his ground, waiting for the weight of his words to settle. He had no plan to save the company they once knew, because that company no longer existed. He began to outline a new direction, stripping away the reliance on giants and focusing on the small, the agile, and the ignored. He was dismantling their past to build the foundation for their survival. The descent began not with a roar, but with the hollow sound of cardboard boxes hitting desks. Within a week, the first wave of departures arrived. Ryan watched from his glass-walled office as his lead engineers cleared their monitors, leaving behind rows of silent, dark screens. Then came the emails. The investors who had once praised his rapid growth now sent formal notices of withdrawal, their messages cold and clinical. By the second month, the industry press turned their attention to the office. Headlines appeared on his screen, branding the firm a sinking ship. Ryan sat in the center of the workspace as the ambient noise of a busy firm vanished, replaced by the persistent, rhythmic hum of the ventilation system. He walked the floor, but there was no one left to talk to. Half the staff had packed their belongings and left. He stood in the lobby, watching a courier deliver a final notice of default from a major creditor. He leaned against the wall, listening to the silence of an empty floor. His bank accounts were hemorrhaging. His reputation was being shredded in public forums, and every metric pointed toward total liquidation. He was alone, surrounded by the debris of his own ambition, waiting for the final collapse. Ryan stopped looking at the clock. The days bled into nights, measured only by the changing light against the office blinds. He moved his desk into the main engineering bay. His phone became an extension of his hand. He dialed until his ear ached, listening to the same dismissive tone from potential clients. Then he hung up and dialed again. Every rejection was a data point. He took notes on his whiteboard, refining the pitch, stripping away the jargon until only the utility remained. By midnight, he sat with his two remaining engineers, their faces illuminated by the harsh glow of lines of code. He wasn't just managing, he was debugging, rewriting, and testing alongside them. His fingers moved across the keyboard with a frantic, rhythmic intensity. When a build failed, he didn't pace. He grabbed a fresh cup of cold coffee and started the cycle over. He pushed them to strip the software down to its most agile core. They worked until their eyes burned and their hands cramped, fueled by nothing but the refusal to stop. He was trading his own exhaustion for a chance at relevance. Each night ended with a small, functional victory in the code, and each morning began with the relentless pursuit of a new customer who would listen. The change arrived in small, sharp bursts. It started with a single email. A small retail firm signed a contract for their newly refined analytical tool. Then another followed. The phone, once a source of dread, began to ring with inquiries from businesses that actually needed the software. Ryan watched the dashboard metrics, the red lines finally leveling out and beginning a slow, steady climb. He gathered the remaining team in the center of the bay. They ran a live test on a client server, and the tool processed the data in seconds, delivering insights that had previously taken hours. The room grew quiet, not with the weight of failure, but with the shock of function. They were no longer building for a giant. They were building for the market. Ryan saw the shift in his engineers. They stopped looking at the exit and started looking at the screen. Each new partnership felt like a brick being laid in a foundation that could not be shaken. They were lean, They were fast, and for the first time in months, they were profitable. The constant, gnawing fear of liquidation receded, replaced by the rhythm of sustainable work. They weren't just surviving. They were building something that could withstand the impact of any single loss. 2 years after the collapse, the office was a different space. The hum of activity was steady, no longer frantic. Ryan stood by the server rack, listening to the cooling fans. He pulled the latest financial report from the printer. The numbers were clear. The firm had hit record profits, but the data showed something more important than the bottom line. The revenue was spread across hundreds of small, independent accounts. If one client left, the firm would not even blink. He walked to the main board and crossed out the last of the old, debt-laden projections. He had spent years terrified of the next phone call, waiting for a single voice to pull the rug out from under him. Now, he set the report down on his desk and felt the weight in his chest finally dissipate. He opened the window, letting the breeze flow through the room. There was no more panic in the hallways. The engineers worked with a quiet, predictable rhythm. He had built a machine that did not break under pressure, a structure that thrived on complexity rather than collapsing under it. He looked at his hands, steady for the first time in his career. He had traded his fragile empire for something far more durable. He had finally earned the security he once thought he could buy. Ryan stood under the bright lights of the conference stage. Below him, hundreds of faces looked up, waiting for the secret to his success. He finished his talk and stepped into the wings. A young founder blocked his path, hands trembling, eyes wide with the raw panic Ryan knew so well. The man began to recount a series of failures, his voice cracking as he described his own crumbling business. Ryan stopped. He reached out and rested a hand on the man's shoulder, waiting for the silence to settle between them. He did not offer empty platitudes or hollow comfort. He leaned in, his gaze fixed on the man's face. "Stop asking what you lost," Ryan said, his tone low and deliberate. "Start asking what you can build next." He watched the younger man process the words. Ryan knew the truth now. A dream does not die when the foundation cracks. It simply sheds its old, fragile skin to reveal the stronger structure beneath. He turned back toward the stage lights. He had once feared the end of his company, but he had discovered something far more valuable. He had built a machine that could not be broken, a legacy that grew tougher with every challenge it survived.